Admiral Crixton stood on the command deck of the Eternal Dominion, the flagship of the Corvoxian Empire's Third Fleet. His four eyes scanned the holographic displays with practiced ease, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the pale blue light of the bridge. For 3,000 years, his people had ruled this sector without opposition. Pirates came and went. Minor species rose and fell. But the Empire? The Empire was eternal. Status report, he clicked, his mandibles clacking with boredom. All systems nominal. Admiral, replied Lieutenant Vexishaw, her antennae twitching as she monitored the sensor grid. Patrol routes are clear. No anomalies detected in the console erupted in a cascade of warning tones. Vexishaw's composure shattered. Admiral, spatial distortion detected at the edge of the quarantine zone. Multiple contacts, massive spatial distortion. Crixton's secondary eyes narrowed. Quarantine zone? That's been dead space for 200 cycles. What kind of distortion? Unknown, sir. The signature doesn't match any known propulsion system in the database. Her claws flew across the interface. Wait, Admiral, the ships, they're using kinetic propulsion. A ripple of laughter spread across the bridge. Kinetic? Crixton's mandibles spread in what passed for a Corvoxian smile. You're telling me someone is still using reaction drives? What is this, a museum exhibit? Sir, the readings are confirmed. Chemical combustion, magnetic acceleration. It's primitive technology, but... Vexishaw's voice faltered. Admiral, there are 10,000 of them. The laughter died. Repeat that, Crixton said quietly. 10,000 contacts, sir. All unknown configuration. They're moving at 0.7 light speed and accelerating. They'll reach our position in 8 minutes. Crixton felt a cold weight settle in his thorax. 10,000 ships. No species in the galaxy could field a fleet that size, not even the Empire. And primitive drives? It made no sense. Advanced civilizations abandoned kinetic propulsion millennia ago. Energy-based systems were cleaner, faster, more efficient. Only the dead races still use such crude methods. The dead races. Scan their hull composition, he ordered. And pull up the historical archives for this sector. I want to know what used to live in that quarantine zone. Vexishaw worked in silence, her antennae flat against her skull. When the results appeared, her skin paled to a sickly gray-green. Admiral, the hulls are reading as steel alloy, reinforced with titanium plating and carbon composite armor. It's archaic. No energy shielding detected, no plasma reinforcement. Just raw metal. And the archives? Vexishaw swallowed. The quarantine zone was established 217 cycles ago. Prior designation Sol system. Former inhabitants. She looked up, her voice barely a whisper. Humans. Silence. Every being on the bridge knew the stories. Humans. The loud, violent primitives who'd barely invented fusion before they vanished. The species that fought each other for centuries, obliterated their own world's atmosphere and never achieved faster-than-light travel. When the galaxy discovered them, they were already dying. A century later, their homeworld went silent. The system was quarantined and forgotten. Impossible, Crixton muttered. Humans are extinct. We verified it. Multiple probes confirmed zero life signs. Admiral, Vexishaw interrupted, her voice cracking. They're hailing us. On screen. The view screen flickered. No image appeared, only audio. The voice that emerged was deep, flat, and utterly devoid of emotion. It spoke in galactic standard, but beneath it was something older, harsher, a language that predated Starflight itself. This is Fleet Admiral Zhang of the United Terran Defense Fleet. You are in violation of quarantined space. Withdraw immediately or you will be fired upon. Crixton felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Terran, that's the human word for their species. Admiral, what do we do? Vexishaw asked, her voice trembling. Crixton straightened. He was an officer of the Empire. He would not be intimidated by ghosts. Open a channel, he ordered. This is Admiral Crixton of the Corvoxian Third Fleet. Identify yourselves. Transmit your registry codes and submit to inspection. Your vessels are in violation of negative. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal. Failure to comply will result in engagement. Engagement? Crixton's mandibles clicked in disbelief. You dare threaten the Corvoxian Empire? We have 600 warships in this sector alone. Your primitive scrap heaps are no match for... The view screen shifted. This time an image appeared. Crixton's words died in his throat. The ship that filled the screen was monstrous. It was a wedge of dark gray steel, bristling with turrets and missile pods. No sleek curves, no elegant energy fields, just brutal angular armor plating scarred with impact craters and burn marks. Along its hull in faded white letters was a name UTDF Retribution, and behind it, stretching into the black, were 9,999 more. By the eternal star, someone whispered. The voice returned. Cold as the void. 50 seconds. Crixton felt the weight of 3,000 years of supremacy crumble in an instant. All ships, battle stations. Prepare to engage. Admiral, are you sure? Now. The fleet erupted into motion. Energy shields flared to life. Plasma cannons charged. Fighter craft launched in swarms. The pride of the Corvoxian Empire arrayed itself for war. And 10,000 human warships did not slow down. 30 seconds. Crixton's claws tightened on the command rail. Fire when in range. Show these primitives what happens when you challenge the Empire. On the view screen, the human fleet grew larger. Closer. 10 seconds. Admiral, they're not slowing down. They're going to... 5. Crixton's world became fire. First contact. First blood. The first volley lit up the void like a newborn star. 300 Corvoxian destroyers opened fire simultaneously, their plasma cannons releasing torrents of superheated energy that could vaporize asteroids. The barrage streaked across the darkness in brilliant ribbons of blue and violet, enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Admiral Crixton watched the display with grim satisfaction. Direct hits confirmed across their forward line. Prepare second, Admiral! Vexisha's voice cracked with disbelief. The human ships, they're still there! Crixton's 4 eyes snapped to the tactical display. The plasma fire had struck true. He could see the impact signatures blazing across the enemy formation. But as the light faded, the human fleet emerged from the inferno virtually unscathed. Impossible! Nothing can withstand a concentrated plasma barrage. What kind of shielding? Sir, they're not using shields. Vexisha interrupted, her claws trembling over the console. It's the armor. The plasma is dissipating on contact. Their hull plating is somehow dispersing the thermal energy before it can penetrate. Crixton stared in horror. Energy shields were elegant, efficient. They redirected force. But raw armor that could absorb plasma fire? That required materials science beyond anything the Empire possessed. Or worse, materials so primitive, so dense that advanced weapons simply couldn't affect them, like trying to cut a mountain with a laser pointer. All batteries continuous fire. Overwhelm their defenses, Crixton roared. The Corvoxian fleet unleashed hell. Plasma cannons fired in endless sequence. Particle beams lanced through space. Energy torpedoes spiraled toward the human formation in glowing swarms, and still, the humans advanced. Then they returned fire. Lieutenant Vexisha watched her console with mounting dread as the human fleet's weapon ports opened. She expected plasma, particle beams, perhaps some exotic energy weapon the galaxy had never seen. Instead, she saw muzzle flashes. Admiral, they're firing projectiles. Projectiles? Crixton's mandibles clicked in confusion. Kinetic rounds? Against energy shields? They're even more primitive than... The first salvo hit. The Crimson Talon, a heavy cruiser positioned at the fleet's vanguard, took a direct hit amidships. The projectile was a tungsten carbide rod traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, accelerated by magnetic rails that ran the length of the human ship's spine. The energy shield that had protected the Talon for 30 years of service flickered once, overloaded instantly, and died. The rod punched through the hull like it was tissue paper. It exited the other side, dragging half the ship's internal structure with it. The Crimson Talon broke in two and exploded in a bloom of escaping atmosphere and reactor plasma. Shields down on the Talon. Someone screamed, "Impossible!" Crixton snarled. "Our shields can deflect any." 3 more cruisers exploded in rapid succession. "Admiral, their kinetic weapons are overloading our shield matrices. The energy requirements to stop solid matter at those velocities. Our generators can't handle it." Crixton felt ice spread through his veins. Of course. Energy shields were designed to deflect energy. Lasers, plasma, particles, all forms of radiation could be redirected with electromagnetic fields. But solid matter? That required direct force-on-force resistance, and the humans were firing rounds that massed tons at relativistic speeds. No shield in the galaxy was designed for that. Evasive maneuvers.
Scramble all fighters.
Close to engagement range where their railguns can't track. The Corvoxian fleet broke formation, ships scattering like startled fish. Fighter craft poured from launch bays by the thousands. Sleek, dart-shaped vessels crackling with plasma cannons. They never reached the human line. Point defense systems lit up across the human fleet like a steel constellation. Rotary cannons, chemical propellant 20th century technology, spun to life and filled the void with walls of depleted uranium slugs. The Korvaxian fighters flew into a meat grinder. They were too fast, too agile for the primitive targeting systems to possibly track, except the humans didn't need to track individual targets. They simply filled the space where the fighters would be with so much lead that evasion became mathematically impossible. Hundreds of fighters disintegrated. In the first 3 seconds, they're using ballistic saturation, Vexisha gasped. They're not aiming. They're just filling space with ammunition. Pull back the fighters. All ships emergency retreat pattern. Negative. The cold human voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You were warned. You fired first. Now you burn. The human fleet split into 3 prongs with mechanical precision. The center continued forward, absorbing fire that would have obliterated lesser vessels. The flanking formations accelerated with sudden, brutal speed, those primitive fusion drives pushing the massive warships to velocities that made Korvaxian engines look sluggish. They were being outmaneuvered by ships using technology 3,000 years out of date. How are they moving that fast? Crix then demanded. Fusion drives can't produce that kind of acceleration. Sir, I don't think they care about crew safety. The G-forces inside those ships must be inertial dampeners offline, crackled a transmission from one of the human ships, barely audible through the static. All hands brace for acceleration. Medical teams to stand by. Vexisha's skin went pale. They're flying without inertial compensation. Their crews are experiencing the full force of those maneuvers. Crix then felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. What kind of species built ships that could kill their own crews? What kind of beings flew them anyway? The answer came in the form of missile contrails. Human missiles were not elegant. They did not phase through shields or manipulate exotic particles. They were simply very large bombs with very big engines flying very fast. The Korvaxian fleet tried to shoot them down. Plasma cannons vaporized dozens. Point defense lasers destroyed hundreds more. 3,000 got through. They were nuclear weapons, fusion boosted, salted with cobalt-60 for maximum radiation yield. Crude, brutal, effective. The night lit up with artificial suns. Korvaxian ships caught in the blasts simply ceased to exist. Others, farther from the detonations, found their shields overloaded by electromagnetic pulses. Their electronics fried. Their crews dying from radiation poisoning that seeped through hull plating never designed to face such primitive barbarism. Radiation alert. Multiple hull breaches. Casualties across all decks. Crixton stared at his tactical display as red icons, Korvaxian ships winked out one by one. In less than 4 minutes, he'd lost over 100 vessels. To humans. Extinct humans, all ships. Retreat, he whispered, sir. Retreat, he screamed. Full power to engines. Get us out of... The Eternal Dominion shuddered as something massive struck its portside armor. Not an explosion. Something had attached itself to the hull. Admiral! Boarding pods. They've... The scream that came through the ship's internal comms was cut short by the sound of gunfire. Not energy weapons. Bullets. Crixton heard them echoing through the corridors. Rapid. Mechanical. Unstoppable. And beneath the gunfire, he heard something worse. Footsteps. Heavy. Methodical. Coming closer. He looked at Vexisha, saw his own terror reflected in her eyes. Seal the bridge, he whispered. Seal it and... The bulkhead exploded inward. Through the smoke stepped a figure in heavy armor, a rifle clutched in gloved hands. The helmet was featureless, reflective, inhuman, but stenciled across the chest plate in faded letters were 2 words. Terran Marines. The figure raised its weapon. Crixton had just enough time to understand that humanity's extinction had been greatly exaggerated. Then the bridge went dark.